Let's just get this over with. This episode starts out with Twilight practicing her magic and a joke that falls flat on its face. Spike and Twilight then decide to go on a stroll throughout the town, with Spike complimenting Twilight on her magical abilities. We learn that unicorns are only supposed to have a little bit of magic pertaining to their special talents, but Twilight's special talent is magic, because she's special. Introducing Scrappy's 3 and 4, Snips and Snails. They're bragging about a new unicorn in town, and she's putting on a magic show in the town square. This happens to be the great and powerful Trixie. She starts embellishing her talents, putting on a show. But Applejack, Rarity, and Rainbow don't take too kindly to it. They seem surprised that Trixie is showing off her talents, almost like it's a show. Speaking of which, how would Trixie's magic show ever be impressive in a world where magic is common? Applejack, Rarity, and Rainbow start complaining that Trixie is showing off, and yes, they are acting incredibly immature. Here's a tip: if you don't like what you see, then just leave the show. The rest of the town seems to be interested in it. They don't leave. Instead, they try to one-up the show-off by being an even bigger show-off. And each of them gets a slice of humble pie. Why am I happy about this? Oh, and while Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy are in the audience, they only cameo in this episode. I guess Andrea Libman was out sick when this episode was made. Or maybe their scenes were cut for time. It probably would have made this episode make somewhat more sense. There's a subplot going on where Spike repeatedly tries to get Twilight to show up Trixie, and both of them come off as annoying. Spike for never shutting up, and Twilight for not doing anything. She's afraid her friends would turn on her like they did on Trixie, and I somewhat don't blame her since Trixie did practically nothing wrong. The annoyance comes from the fact that she has the ability to get Trixie to go away. No, I don't hate Trixie, but you can thank M.A. Larson for that. Now maybe you could do something with these two. That's something, I guess. As for this episode, they wait over Trixie hand and hoof. We learned earlier that Trixie banished an Ursa Major, so they start fawning over her. Enter Spike, who doesn't believe a word that Trixie said. He tells Tweedledee and Tweedledum that they shouldn't either, unless they actually see it with their own eyes. You see where this is going. They go into the Everfree Forest in the middle of the night because their parents want them dead like the rest of us, and they find what they think is an Ursa Major. To be fair, that is a pretty cool design. It chases them back into town. Have I told you how annoying their voices are? Tweedledee and Tweedledum wake up Trixie to have her vanquish the Ursa. This is why I don't hate Trixie. She actually tries to undo the mess that these two idiots made. And she fails. Then the Ursa starts rampaging throughout the town. Twilight finally does something and puts the beast to sleep in the first anticlimax of the series, a trend which still continues to this day. We learn later that it's actually an Ursa Minor, which is a really pointless twist when you think about it. Now our friends are impressed because Twilight doesn't embellish her talents.
Magic's got nothing to do with it. Trixie's just a loudmouth.
Oh my god, Rainbow, you are not one to talk.
Magic is a part of who you are, Sugar Cube, and we like who you are.
But magic is part of who Trixie is too. Speaking of which, Trixie runs off and these two boneheads get mustaches. Remember back when I said I found Boastbusters worse than Ne'er-Do-Well? I firmly believe that. Ne'er-Do-Well at least kept my attention. It took me 3 times to get through this episode, no joke. So yeah, it's bad. When I say bad, I mean bad for this show. It never gets anywhere near Splinter territory, but that doesn't mean I like it. Why is this a bad episode? I said that I don't hate Trixie. Well, that's because she looks like a saint next to our main characters. Not to mention next to these two. You never want to make the antagonist look better than the protagonist. Rainbow Dash has no business talking about someone else being a show-off. Applejack and Rarity would probably ignore Trixie. Speaking of that, if you didn't like the magic show, which still doesn't make any sense, why didn't you just leave? When people annoy me, I ignore them. I can't help but think that Pinkie Pie and Fluttershy had some role in this episode, but were cut for time or because Andrea Libman was sick or something. I doubt it could have saved this episode, but it probably would have made this episode a little bit more bearable. Chris Savino only wrote one other episode, and for good reason. To his credit, Stairmaster is much better in every regard. As for Boastbusters, it's an utter train wreck.
I have a very low tolerance level for stupid bullshit.